You're losing money if you're paying for investment management. This is just a fact. When I say losing money, you're not losing in terms of I had 100,000, now I got 90,000. It's you're losing to just a good old-fashioned benchmark of index funds. It's just this isn't debatable anymore, and so I'm going to show it to you here. But if you're paying for investment management and you're not getting any other services, just stop, man, stop, because you're literally throwing good money after bad. Again, that I just want to be clear. That doesn't mean you're losing money specifically. But you are losing if you just put it in a target fund or index funds or something like this with very low fees. This shouldn't be revolutionary, but we're going to cite this MBER piece right here. MBER Working Paper Series, the risk, reward, and asset allocation of non-profit endowment funds. Non-profit endowment funds. And we got these three, Andrew Lowe, Igor Matyev, and Stefan Zumi. Stefan's got the Zoomies. It's very Irish Catholic names there for sure. And two of them are out of MIT. And one's at Illinois. So we couldn't find, I don't know, is Stefan Zumi, is that a Pole? Because I don't think it is, because Chicago, lots of Polish people, in Boston, lots of Irish Catholics. But I guess we couldn't find people of that nature there. All right. Anyway, let's go to this. This is just Dateline just the other day, as a matter of fact, July 2025. And we're going to show you the abstract. Most endowments underperform passive benchmarks. So the weakest performance concentrated among smaller self-managed funds. Advisory fees are positively correlated with gross returns, but are negatively correlated with net returns, suggesting overpayment for investment services. But Bogle's dissertation when he was at Princeton, like the 1950s, was on this, which led to the foundation of the Vanguard first index. Well, not the first, but the first mainstream index fund. I think MFS, Massachusetts Financial Services, I think they had the first index fund, but I think it's only for qualified plans. I can't remember. But, the Index 500 of Vanguard started in 1976, if memory serves, because Bogle said net of fees, the average investor would be better just being in the benchmark, just matching the benchmark. And no one's disproved this. Ever. And it will never be. And we're going to come down here. This paper provides the first comprehensive analysis of nonprofit endowment funds across the full spectrum of nonprofit organizations. We assemble a novel database or data set from tax filings submitted to the Internal Revenue Service covering fiscal years 2008 through 2020. Among nearly 375,000 organizations in our samples and approximately 40,000 reporting managing endowments or endowment assets. 70% of universities maintain endowments compared to just 7.5% of religious organizations. So my man Andrew posted the other day, don't tax Christian organizations, because I'm a huge fan of taxing nonprofits. He said, don't do it. They're doing great work. I said, dude, at the end of the day, maybe we can just start with the foundation, the endowments, because as you can see right here, only 7.5% religious organizations actually have endowments, but 70% of universities do. So let's start there. We can compromise with my man Andrew and say, all right, we'll start taxing endowments. Make them be taxed as just good old-fashioned private businesses. Endowment funds are disproportionately held by older and larger nonprofits. The average total assets of nonprofits is 9.5, without endowments, total assets with nonprofits without endowments is 9.5 million compared to 64 million to nonprofits with endowments. Over our sample period, nonprofit endowments grew at an average rate of 9.4%. But this growth was driven by two sources, investment returns and new contributions. The average growth is skewed by a small number of newer and smaller endowments receiving large inflows. Isn't that interesting? The rich people are saying, I really want to have Black Lives Matter get my money. So we're going to start a new endowment at freaking Spelman College and give them tons of money. I'm Roger Ferguson from TIA Craft or something like that. Or I'm a big lib, Melinda Gates or whatever the hell her name is. I just want to show that I'm down with Black Lives Matter. In comparison, the median endowment just grew at 3.4% a year. Isn't that interesting? Nonprofits endowments grew by 9.4% on average, but the median just grew by 3.4%. This suggests that in the aggregate, growth is driven primarily by capital appreciation rather than new fundraising. So again, a few nonprofit endowments got the bulk of the new money coming in. And I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know what those nonprofits are, but they're small and they're getting a huge amount of new fund resources. Who is funding that? Who's funding that? Well, we know scumbags, without question, because this is how they do it to avoid paying estate tax or gift tax. It's freaking crazy. So 9.4% was the average growth. And if someone says endowments are crushing, you say, what's the average growth, the median growth? 3.4%. The average net investment return is 4.3%. That's the average, which again, averages skews to the outliers, the higher performers. For context, a conservative multi-asset benchmark appropriate for endowments earn an average annual return of 6.7% over the same period. As a result, the equal-weighted portfolio of endowment funds underperformed the benchmark by approximately 20% cumulatively. That's 20% less money to the endowment and essentially 20% more money to the investment managers. That's losing money, unequivocally, because we see right here, 6.7 versus 4.3. The weaker performance can be attributed to three main factors. And the last one's the biggest one. Smaller funds are much more likely to invest in individual securities and diversified vehicles such as mutual funds and ETFs. We find this strategy is associated with an average reduction of approximately 1 percentage point in annual returns. Essentially, they're not matching the benchmark is what it is. Let's keep going. The higher education sector exhibits the highest average return, but this is entirely driven by the larger size. We already talked about that. After adjusting for size, the higher education endowments rank 6 out of 11 sectors. Our results reveal a puzzling fact. Hospital endowments significantly underperform all other sectors. This underperformance is not explained by asset allocation, as hospital endowments exhibit substantial exposure to risk assets. Moreover, hospitals manage relatively large endowments, yet underperform without even adjusting for size. Why would that be? Because they're paying higher fees. Funds employing external advisors perform better, i.e., I'm not going to hire in-house money management. I'm just going to basically put into ETFs. That's what they're saying here. They're not going to say it explicitly. I will. Absolutely. Because an external money manager will be VOO at Vanguard. Funds that manage investments internally, on average, earn 40 basis points lower per year. And remember, if the median return is 4% roughly, that's a 10% annualized difference, compounded. In contrast, funds with a dedicated CIO, Chief Investment Officer, do not outperform other funds, and if anything, their performance is marginally weaker. We find evidence that no higher CEO compensation or CIO compensation is associated with better returns. In fact, among funds that employ external advisors, higher CIO is associated with negatively correlated with investment performance. Overall, these findings suggest that the outsourced chief investment officer model of endowment management has historically produced better investment outcomes during our sample period, i.e., we're just going to turn the money over to Vanguard. That's literally what they're saying. Or some ETF that doesn't charge much of fees. BlackRock, and I hate BlackRock, but hey, man, I mean, frankly, their investment fees are quite low. It's more power to them. We show that fees are weakly positively correlated with gross returns, but strongly negatively correlated with net returns. And that's all you need to know. Overall, the findings suggest that while external advisors may help achieve higher gross returns, endowments that pay higher fees earn lower net investment returns on average. So we're just going to scroll down here. We're going to show you this graph they got down here. I'm going to show you here if I hold on. Purple's our benchmark. Yellow is S&P 500, EW is equal weighted, way below, and VW is value weighted. All right, so we got value weighted funds, and I'm not exactly sure what that is, but you can see right here, value weighted returns were lower than the benchmark and the S&P 500, other than 2019 and 20. Equal weighted portfolios way lower than these guys. Except right here, from 2008 to 2010, it was better than the S&P 500. Well, that's of course, but it's much lower than the benchmark. And then we go, that's where people filed return Q2. Q4 is even worse. S&P 500 smoked everybody. Benchmark smoked everybody. Benchmarks would be more diversified portfolio. Value weighted did worse, and equal weighted did way worse. And we're talking 2007 to 2020. So if the endowments with all the fancy schmancy, good time rock roll, plastic banana CIOs and stuff can't outperform, why would you be able to outperform paying a guy 1.25? And in fact, the median fee on here was like 53 basis points or something like that. I think we got in here. It was the median. Let me check. Yeah, so the median fee was 53 basis points, which is going to be significantly lower than most like what you're going to pay. So if the endowments can't do it, you think you can? Now, again, if you're getting service outside of just investment management, that's fine. There's absolutely no reason just to hire some guy to manage your money. There's none whatsoever. If that's all he's doing, he's not going to beat the benchmark. But Josh, dude, don't Josh me. John Bogle talked about this in his dissertation in 1950s at Princeton, and no one has beaten him. Fidelity tried, and Fidelity got smoked, and now look where Fidelity is. They're more along the lines of Vanguard than they are Fidelity. The Johnson family got smoked by John Bogle. Now, of course, Johnson family is worth 90 billion, trillion, gazillion dollars, where John Bogle was only worth 20 million when he died. Where's the Johnson family money coming from? You knew who it was coming from. Your back pocket. And the performance doesn't justify it. It just does not. All right, God bless. All right, so the question is, what do I do differently? Well, that's where you just, man, you can do a million different things. But if we look at VTI and BN, let me just do a different video on that. All right, hang tight. We'll do another one, follow up that. God bless.